Welcome to the latest edition of the Shukri Rights podcast with your host, Shukri Rights. Of all days, it's draft day. And who else better to bring in than Matt McCarthy of 98.5 The Sports Hub? And I know this guy is primarily known for baseball, but for goodness sakes, if you listen to him here in Greater Boston or even here in New England, the man is well known for his hot McTakey takes, especially when it comes to the Red Sox. Who, by the way, won last night, 1-0. How the hell? I don't know. They beat Jacob deGrom. I don't know, but it's the freaking New York Mets. So, Matt, what's going on? How are you doing today, my guy?
Hey, it is so good to be on with you. I'm doing great. It's draft day. I woke up, I don't know. You know how it is. Like, it's lying season. Like, I didn't even think about the draft until today because, for the most part, it's all a bunch of crap being thrown out there, which is fascinating.
Typical.
And it's interesting and it's fun.
Yeah.
But this has felt like the longest buildup to any draft that we've had because it's the biggest draft the Patriots have had in 20 years. So,
yeah,
man, I can't imagine what it'd be like to go through this every year where you're having to go through all the reports. Are they trading up? Or are they trading down? We haven't had to do that around these parts because in the end, it really didn't matter because they were picking 32nd every year. Well, now they're picking 15th because they were mediocre last year, and it feels like it means more. So it's exciting. But at the same time, I'm just ready for it to happen. All the build, just it can't. When is it? 8:00 tonight?
8:00.
8:00 to me right now.
Exactly. We're going to start with that because, listen, I'm going to start from point A before we get to Z. Point A. How in God's green earth we get to this point? We got here because someone along the way in 2017 got too big for their britches and did not plan for life after Brady. AKA A.B, not A.D, or after the death of Christ or whatever. But here we are after a 7-9 season, and I look at this team, and I look at Bill, and I said, and I've been very consistent throughout since September, all the way up till now, but even more so during the offseason that the Patriots, Belichick, you better show me something because I am ready to grab you by the jugular and rip you apart because you had an opportunity to do something about the quarterback, and yet you chose to go with a guy who, listen, the excuses are all lined up there for the taking, and I'm not having any of it. So my question to you is, biggest rumor right now, Jimmy G potentially being available via trade. They're talking about maybe restructuring his contract. Do you see the Patriots making this move ahead of the draft tonight?
Man, it's so hard to say. I mean, I think they make this move eventually. Like if you said, you put a gun to my head and say, McCarthy, who's the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots in 2021? I'm very much hoping it's Jimmy Garoppolo. I am. I think it's the best approach because here's the thing. I don't think you have to give up a first-round pick for Garoppolo, particularly with the price that Teddy Bridgewater went for yesterday, which was the best news the Patriots have had in quite some time.
Absolutely.
The two best pieces of news this offseason for the Patriots outside of the things they did, and I think they had a good offseason, bringing in the tight ends, bringing in Judah. They had a great offseason for the most part, but the two best pieces of news that have happened so far, in regards to the draft and in regards to quarterback availability is the Niners moving up and then the Broncos trading only a 6th round pick for Teddy Bridgewater, which to me lowers Garoppolo's value, particularly in an offseason where quarterbacks were going for an astronomically high price. You look at what, Matt Stafford went for, at the beginning of the offseason. So yesterday was a really positive development for the Patriots, with Bridgewater going. I do think it happens. I just still wonder if it happens tonight because it does feel like there is a situation where the 49ers are going to wait and they're going to wait and they're going to wait it out. And eventually maybe they cut the guy, and then maybe the Patriots pounce in August. But at that point, it's too late. You want to bring him in. You want to have him in the system. Yeah. It feels like you've got a bit of you've got two sides that are trying to negotiate this thing to where they want it to go, and it doesn't feel like it's happened. I don't know if it happens by tonight. I don't know if it happens by this weekend. I feel like most likely it happens eventually, but I don't know if it's going to happen tonight. That would just be my guess, and I think that's probably still plan A for the Patriots at this point. Yeah. We'll see how things break out on the board, but I think Garoppolo is still plan A. And it should be plan A for Bill. He felt so strongly about him that he was going to be willing to move on from Tom Brady, the greatest player in the history of the league,
Yeah.
in favor of Jimmy Garoppolo. So there's no reason he should feel any worse about him now. He has proven that he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if he can stay healthy, but this should be plan A for Bill. I firmly believe that.
I think it should, but you still draft a quarterback, and the reason is because the number one thing I look at when it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo, health.
Yeah.
You go back to 2016. What led Bill Belichick going from Garoppolo to Jacoby Brissett? Injury. You look at his time in San Francisco. It was never a matter of talents, health. Can he stay healthy? And as well as the system. Because I have had a philosophy for the longest of time that quarterbacks survive in this league based on the system that they're in. We've seen it throughout history. We can talk about Brett Favre with Mike Holmgren when he was in Green Bay. We can talk about Tom Brady and with Bill Belichick, obviously. But what I was about to get at was look at Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Yep.
Is Patrick Mahomes as great as he is if he's in any other system? Chances are maybe not so much. Not to undermine his talent, but the system has a lot to do with the success of the quarterback in the NFL. So when I look at Jimmy G in San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan has always worked well with a quarterback that can gunsling it down the field. Go look at Matt Ryan, for example, when he was in Atlanta. Yep. Jimmy G is not that type of guy. He's more of a short pass, quick throw to a guy like an Edelman or Amendola, like just as an example. And I wonder if you are the Patriots, and I talked about this on my national radio show I do for Pacific Radio Network, which is available on iHeartRadio. I said, I think that Kyle Trask ends up with New England at number 15 because I went through the top 6 quarterback prospects. I said, listen, I think Justin Fields gets grabbed by Denver at number 9 because Denver's at number 9 right now. And I said also that I look at a team like Atlanta, they don't need a quarterback. They have a quarterback for right now, but they can. And if they were to go get a quarterback for the future, I wouldn't put a pass them to go after a guy like Mac Jones out of Alabama. So my question to you is, do you think that the Patriots ultimately move up in the draft to go grab like a Justin Fields, or do you think they stay at 15 and draft someone else?
I think it's a possibility. However, it's not something that I would bet on. Given the cost that it would be to move up the draft board, that is a cost that Bill Belichick is likely not crazy on paying. And listen, Bill loves value more than anything else, which is why I think it's most likely, if they are bringing in a quarterback, that it is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's not going to have to give up as much, and he might restructure the contract, which we know Bill loves. So I have a hard time seeing that they're going to go, say, all the way up to number 4 to get Justin Fields. There are all kinds of rumors about the Patriots calling about number 4. There are all kinds of rumors about the Patriots calling about every pick, which every team probably does. And you know what? If I'm the Falcons at number 4, I'm telling the whole world that the Patriots are calling up to number 4. Why? Because they need a quarterback.
Exactly.
Like, you know how it is. Yeah. That's why this stuff is fascinating. And that's why I don't put really too much stock into anything, because, all right, if you're the Falcons and you're trying to drum up interest for that pick, who's the team that you're going to say is interested in coming up? Well, you look at kind of 10 to 20, the Patriots are right there in 15. They need a quarterback. So what do you tell the whole world? Yeah, the Patriots have been calling us. So that's why I don't necessarily buy that. In regards to your question, I mean, put it this way. I think if Fields starts dropping, or if somebody starts dropping, maybe Trey Lance, Trey Lance or Fields, if somebody starts dropping, I could see the Patriots picking up the phone and calling Detroit at 7, Carolina at 8, and saying, what would it take?
What about Miami, by the way? What about Miami, who's, by the way, at number 6?
I could see that too. Brian Flores is there, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the price might be a little too high to go up to number 6, particularly given that, Brian Flores has won basically every trade he's done involving draft picks. Like, the guy's a master at moving around the board. I mean, Bill has to be envious of the way that Flores has moved around the board and that organization has moved around the board. So, I mean, I could see that the Dolphins will take a call from anybody on a draft pick. We know that. I mean, they've proven that. So I think that's where it gets really interesting. The draft, to me, starts at 4 because we don't know what's going to happen at 4. We don't know who the Niners are going to take at 3, but it's going to be a quarterback. So what happens at 4 with whoever is remaining there? Do the Falcons take a guy? If the Falcons don't take a guy, well, then all of a sudden the chances of quarterback dropping into maybe that sweet spot range for the Patriots to trade up get a lot higher. And then somebody, you better believe somebody, is coming up to 7, 8, somewhere in there, because Denver might need a quarterback at 9. And if there are teams interested, they're going to look to jump Denver. And you know what? If I'm Denver, I'm looking to go up to 7 or 6 if I'm interested in a quarterback. That's what's fascinating about all of this. Like, we don't really know. I don't really know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know what the Patriots are going to do, but I know it's going to be a talking point whatever they do.
For sure. And which is why I look at the Patriots, the draft tonight, and I say this is such a big night in which that for years, and as you mentioned earlier in this segment, that this is a team that has annually picked either 31st or 32nd for a very long time, and that they are in need of a quarterback. And my greatest fear is they take someone else in which they are a defensive end, or they are a linebacker, or they are a safety, and they don't go after a quarterback. Am I insane, or is my fear a bit more rationalized, given that we've seen Belichick time and time again go after the guy who is not high on the needs list, but rather because he's such a good drafter of defensive players, most notably Dante Hightower, and obviously acquiring Kyle Van Noy from Detroit to come play here in New England, and we've seen the impact that those guys have had.
Yeah, I don't think you would be totally right to criticize the Patriots for not addressing quarterback in some way, shape, or form. I will not freak out if it's not in the first round. If you get, say, Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State, who's the best linebacker in the draft at 15, and he becomes Dante Hightower's replacement, they're going to need somebody like that eventually. If you go out and get an impact linebacker like that, or if you say get, Pat Surtain's kid, who's supposed to be, elite, I'm not going to complain about that one bit. You don't pick this high very often. When they do, they've always gotten impact defensive players. Richard Seymour at 6 in Belichick's, first draft. Or in the 2001 draft. Gerard Mayo, when they traded down from 7 to 10, obviously impact player, not as impactful as Dante Hightower, but still an impact player, defensive, rookie of the year, type of player. They got Ty Warren at 13. They got Will Fork at 20 or 21. But the running list of impact defensive players that they've had in the first round is really pretty impressive. So I'm not going to complain if you get Micah Parsons or Pat Surtain or somebody like that at 15. I will complain if you don't address quarterback in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, whether that's taking, a Kellen Mond in the second round. If you take a quarterback in the second or third round, okay, let's see what this is. You're building the team, via defense, and you're building a team around a quarterback. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is Cam Newton being the starting quarterback.
Oh, God, neither am I.
What I'm not okay with is the same quarterback returning. So I'm not going to lose my mind if they don't take a quarterback in the first round tonight and Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been acquired. I am willing to give them some time. But I promise you I will lose my mind in September if Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham are still the starting quarterbacks. I bow to you right here.
I'm telling you, I am willing to go on top of the crew come week 3 or 4, sometime this fall, on a Monday morning after a Patriots loss. And let's say the Patriots start off 1-3, because we know around here that the Patriots are notorious for starting off slow in September. That's a fact. And Cam Newton looks like the Cam Newton of 2020. And it's like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. We're back at square one again with this guy. But no, let's bring him out for one more year. Yeah. Great idea. So my greatest fear is that, listen, we know who they are going to be playing. This schedule in 2021 is going to be an absolute juggernaut, period. There's no other way around it. But what I am worried about is the Patriots, if they find themselves at a point where they're just barely hovering around 500, and keep in mind, in the AFC, And for all the Pats fans who look at the AFC as a whole and say, wow, what a complete total wasteland. No, Buffalo's not going anywhere. Last year was not a mirage. Yep. Josh Allen is the real deal. Sorry, but it's the truth. Kansas City is the class of the AFC until proven otherwise. They're not going anywhere. And then after that, it's basically all hands on deck. Like, I mean, you can still make a case for Pittsburgh, I mean, and so forth, et cetera. I mean, hell, even Cleveland. And yes, and I even hate to even admit that, but let's face it, that defense in Cleveland is legitimate as there is in the league. There's no getting around that. So I wonder if you are New England and you look at what they've done in the offseason, is it fair to say that all of that could be potentially undermined based on what they do or they don't do at the quarterback position?
Absolutely. You need the quarterback. They're a significantly better team than they were on paper last year outside of the quarterback. And I'm sorry, the quarterback was the reason you lost 3 to 4 games last year. Buffalo,
including the Houston game. Yeah.
Houston, where I know he threw for 350 yards, and Bill was going to tell you all about that. But did you see that final drive? Like, that was not a professional final drive. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Yeah. So, listen, they've got more talent around the quarterback. Does that mean an extra win? Probably, maybe 2. But the schedule, I think, is more difficult, this year.
Yeah.
So they need to address the quarterback position. You cannot go into this season with Cam Newton as your quarterback. And it's my hope, and, Greg Bedard has said this, that he's heard from, somebody close to the situation. I don't want to misrepresent where he heard this. I don't know if it was from somebody in the organization or somebody close to the situation saying, we didn't build this for Cam Newton. Well, I hope that's right, because Cam Newton is going to take this thing down, and he's going to tear this thing down because he's just not good enough. He's just not capable. And you know what? I hope they didn't build it for Jarrett Stidham either. I don't want anybody from that quarterback room last year back this year. So this is a critical moment in the offseason. It doesn't have to be tonight, but can we get somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round? Can you trade a 4th round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo? Can you get it done? Can you just pay the guy, not worry about the contract too much? You need a quarterback. Go out and get one. Doesn't have to be in the 1st round, but go out and address it in some way, shape, or form, hopefully this weekend.
I mentioned a while back that Brady has been the security blanket, the ultimate security blanket for Belichick for 20 years. And I said, listen, Belichick has made some lousy draft picks in terms of the offensive side of the ball in recent memory. I mean, I don't think I need to remind you about N'Keal Harry at the risk of turning your face absolutely like more red than a rose for Valentine's Day. So
that's right. We go from like, pale Irish white, like as pale as the dayest day to just bright red. Of course, which us Irish people do anyway, right?
Yes.
Particularly when we drink, it just goes from just pure white to nothing but red.
That's red, like, I mean, more red than a steak from freaking Davio's, for all I know.
Right.
But I wonder, like, in all seriousness, because this is the topic that I am so fired up now, and I'm going to be watching this draft tonight like a hawk in the sky that's hunting for its prey. Goodness grief, you don't have that security blanket anymore. And my biggest fault with Bill defenders, or as I like to call Bill's Mafia, and I mean Bill Belichick Mafia folks among the Patriots fan base, is that you find excuses to defend the man. I get that he's coached the team to 6 Super Bowl titles, but that was with Brady. Go look at the numbers. Post Brady, and even before he got Brady, he has a losing record. Numbers don't lie. There's an old saying by a former NFL head coach: you are what your records say that you are. So the question I'll ask you is, do you think that he finally comes to his senses and say, you know what? The old way of me doing things has not worked before prior to having Brady, and perhaps that maybe I should take some sort of value into the quarterback, given that who you're contending with in the AFC, like a Justin Herbert, a Patrick Mahomes, a Baker Mayfield, and a Josh Allen.
It is my absolute hope that Bill Belichick understands that what he has at quarterback is not good enough. I think deep
Yeah.
down he knows that. Now, I think his ego has gotten in the way here a little bit. Cam Newton should not have been the starting quarterback at the end of last year, but he wanted to take care of that guy because Cam took care of him and was, saying that he had the almighty on speed dial and saying things that,
Yeah.
Bill likes. So I think that did get in his way. But ultimately, you do have to remind yourself that, this is Bill Belichick, who is notoriously ruthless, notoriously unsentimental, but he has been a little bit sentimental about this quarterback position.
Oh, yeah.
He made sure that Jimmy Garoppolo went to a place where he'd be successful. Why? Because it was going to make Bill look good, because Bill wanted to keep Garoppolo over Brady. He had Cam Newton start all of last year because, well, he liked Cam, and for whatever reason, he didn't like Stidham. I think it was more on not to say on a personal level. I'm sure, Stidham's a good guy and all that, but
Yeah.
there was something that they felt that they were not that he did not deserve the job, or he did not deserve the opportunity. So they weren't going to give it to him, and they weren't going to, screw Cam, because even though Cam didn't play well, they were going to take care of Cam because Cam had taken care of them. I do think that, listen, he's still a very good coach. He has to understand that Cam is not, is not a very good quarterback. So they are interested. They're interested in a quarterback. Whether they are willing to make that happen, that's the big difference here. Like, okay, you can say we need a quarterback, we need to improve here, but are you willing to pay the price? And that's my question about Bill. Is he willing to pay the price to get a quarterback? Because he was spoiled for 20 years where, for the vast majority of the time, Brady took less. Brady took his fair share. Trust me. That's, at times he was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. When he signed, I think, that contract in like 2010 or 2011, he was the highest paid quarterback in the history of the league at that point. Now, he took pay cuts after that. And, he took, stuff off the top. He, took incentivized deals later on in his career. And, so, he definitely did give some back to the team. And I just don't think Bill has been able to get out of that mentality just yet, where he is kind of still unwilling to pay the price that a quarterback would cost in either draft capital or Jimmy Garoppolo at $25 million. Like, that's a reasonable price to pay for a average quarterback in the NFL. You know why? Because that's what average quarterbacks in the NFL get.
Exactly.
But I don't know if Bill's willing to pay that price, and Bill wants to do it on his terms. He needs to understand that with the quarterback, you do it on their terms. You do it on your terms with everybody else. But in this league, at that position, you have to do it on their terms. Brady just enabled Bill for 20 years by taking less the vast majority of the time.
And when you've been enabled for 20 years, it's awfully hard to say, nah, no, we can't do this the same way. What do you mean? It's ingrained. It's just like, sorry, but here's a pin to your balloon. Pop. Like, you're basically starting at ground zero. You're in terms of the NFL quarterback market. So let's switch tracks from the NFL draft to baseball, because I'm not going to go in a direction in which that you think I might go just yet, but I'm going to ask you, where did your love and your passion for baseball come from?
I think I came out of the womb loving baseball, to be totally honest. I don't ever remember a time where baseball wasn't, one of the things that I cared about the most in my life. I remember as a kid, watching the 95 Red Sox. I was 4 years old. I remember Mo Vaughn getting up on the horse. It was like the coolest thing. Mo Vaughn was my idol. I loved Mo Vaughn. It was just, I loved the Red Sox. I loved Roger Clemens. I couldn't believe they let him go. It was just, I loved baseball from the second I came out of the womb, really. My dad's a baseball fan. My grandfather was a diehard baseball fan. Is probably one of the reasons I love the game so much. He tried to make me a Yankees fan. He was from New York. Didn't work for too long. But you're a Yankees guy, right?
Diehard. Oh yeah.
You want story time here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah.
I would not be alive if it weren't for Don Larson. I would not have been born. And here's why.
I gotta hear this.
My grandfather, let's see, 1956. He was 27 years old. He went to Yankee Stadium. It was Game 5, right? Game 5 of the 56 World Series.
Yep.
All right. So he went to Yankee Stadium, Game 5, 1956 World Series. He went with 3 friends, all of whom were Brooklyn Dodger fans. He was a Yankee fan.
Wow.
They bet a case of beer on the outcome of the game. Don Larson throws a perfect game. My grandfather wins a 6-pack of beer, downs the 6-pack, goes home to his girlfriend, my grandmother, proposes. She says yes. He said it was the best way to possibly celebrate Don Larson's perfect game. He went home, proposed. They got married. 35 baseball seasons later, I show up. The rest is history.
Wow. I mean,
program from that game.
That one, wow. That in itself somehow, some ways, Trump overseeing a Twitter video of a couple coming home from Yankee Stadium, riding the 4 train, having sex on a train. Like that in itself is way better than that. That's just no. There's no competition there. I mean, goodness grief. Like I was born and raised in New York. So for me, growing up in New York and witnessing those dynasty teams, and I tell people this, I'm like, unless you were either a Yankee fan, but especially if you grew up in New York or in the New York metropolitan area during that time, like the Yankees were truly a religion in many ways than one, where like, I mean, Joe Torre, and I give Joe Torre so much love and admiration, because people say, and it makes me angry, actually, literally, when they say, well, anybody could have managed those great teams. Like, no, that's false. Because understand something. In New York, the expectation is unlike anywhere else in the world.
Yep.
And because it's the Yankees, it's the preeminent franchise in baseball and even in sports.
In North American sports.
In North American sports, there comes that gravitas that comes along with it. So you talk about a franchise that happened to drafted and develop great talent like Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, Annie Pettitte. Those guys, they weren't quote unquote bought. Like they were drafted. This was thanks to the great drafting of the late Gene Michael. And I think that when I look back on those days and I say, you know what, I really miss those days so much, in which that it was about drafting and developing, and that free agency did play a role. Absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you don't win championships unless you're able to make some shrewd trades, like Paul O'Neill from the Reds prior to the 93 season, or signing Tino Martinez after the 95 season from Seattle. So I want to ask you, in terms of free agency and how much it's changed in the last 25 years, what do you see as the number one factor in free agency changing within the sport? And do you think it has changed for the better, or has it changed for the worst?
Well, I think in recent off seasons, it's changed for the worst because there isn't as much activity. You know, you don't have that winter meetings frenzy. Baseball needs to find a way to make the off season more what it used to be. Baseball used to have the preeminent off season in all of sports, the hot stove. It used to be the best. Now it might be the worst, or, you know, I mean, I don't know how you compare it to hockey, but you don't have that kind of free agent frenzy. Like the NFL owns that week in March. The NBA owns the week of July 1. Baseball should own a week at some point in the calendar, the way they kind of used to with the winter meetings. So I think it has changed for the worse. I mean, listen, you know, there's more money being thrown around in the game than ever before. So, I mean, that's good for the, you know, to me, the economics of the game, for the players and all of that. But that doesn't impact, like, the fans. Like, how does that impact us, other than the fact that we're probably paying higher ticket prices when we go to Fenway, go to Yankee Stadium, you name it. But that's good for the overall health of the sport. And the more money that's being spent, it's a better sign, like all that. But I think the actual activity in these off seasons has been, you know, unfortunately, you know, disappointing. I mean, you remember what it was like in 2003, you know, the A-Rod off season, you know, the Red Sox, you know, pursue A-Rod, the Yankees make that trade, like, but then, you know, the Red Sox get Kurt Schilling and all that. Like, it's just, they trade for Keith Foulke. Like, those were dramatic, big time off seasons. And nobody's doing that anymore except the San Diego Padres, which is why they might be the most interesting team in baseball. And of course they're showing it on the diamond, but baseball needs more of that activity. So I think free agency has changed over 25 years. And unfortunately, I think it's changing for the worse, but it doesn't mean that it has to change for the worse. I think the reason it's changing is it's just, you know, you have too many teams not interested in spending money, and, you know, too many players willing to wait out until the beginning of spring training. Like we got to structure this a little bit more. We got to get some deadlines here. We got to create activity, and baseball can do that, I think, simply through legislation and rules. Do a tampering period, do the start of free agency, have a period where no activity can happen. People in the game would like that because they can go on vacation and all that, and then that would force things to get done by deadlines. I think there's an easy fix here, and baseball needs to get back to that point where the off season is just as exciting as, say, a big point in the regular season or a big point in the actual in-season calendar.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up that example, because let's go back to the winter of 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
Memories.
February.
Oh my God. Like February, I remember so vividly to this. I was in 7th grade that winter. And I remember.
I was too. We got to be like the same age.
I'll be 30 in October.
Yeah, I'll be 30 in May. We're the same age.
Yeah,
we experienced that. We experienced that. And by the way, what a great time to grow up in baseball, because that dynasty was incredible. The steroid era, everything, the home run race, what a great time to grow up as a baseball fan.
Absolutely. That's the Yankee dynasty was one thing, but there was a 2-year period where I feel like I wouldn't say that baseball went dull, no, but rather it wasn't as like exciting, or there wasn't as much fireworks until after the 03 ALCS of the 03 World Series. Yeah. The winter of 03-04, I remember being in New York, and I'll listen to the fan of Mike and the Mad Dog. Yep. Like that's an institution in New York forever and always.
Oh, the best.
And absolutely. And I remember rumors were flying around A-Rod. The Yankees, they're in on A-Rod, but the Red Sox, they had just gotten Curt Schilling. As you mentioned, they acquired Keith Falk, who obviously would end up playing a major role in a 2004 run to the World Series, first title in 86 years. And I was like, there's no way the Yankees would go out and trade for A-Rod. I mean, listen, I get at the time he was the best shortstop in the sport, but we have Jeter at short. We have Soriano at freaking second base. Like, what do we need A-Rod for? But George Steinbrenner, the late George Steinbrenner being what he was, no. We got to go get him.
Yep.
And when the day that the news broke, I remember my jaw just dropped, as into like, we got who? And now in my mind, this is how my mind operates. So now the lineup for the 04 Yankees was going to look like, you might have Enrique Wilson, which obviously didn't happen, but you're going to have freaking Tony Womack. You're going to have Kenny Lofton. You're going to have Hideki Matsui. You're going to have Jeter. You're going to have Sheffield, who was the first year Yankee after having played in Atlanta in 03.
Yep.
And it was like, A-Rod?
A-Rod?
What the hell? We should win this thing outright. Are you kidding me? And I remember I heard about the outrage in Boston. Like, Theo Epstein reportedly was so furious at the trade that he reportedly threw a chair. And as a Red Sox fan at that time, what do you remember most about that winter, that offseason?
That was the biggest kick in the dick.
Yes.
I have experienced in like regards to an off-season move or anything, because like, we were 12 years old.
Yep.
And I'd spent the off-season, I kid you not, I got like A-Rod stuff under the Christmas tree.
Wow.
That off-season. Like, my parents got like these little flip books or whatever, where you could like flip through, and it's like, I don't know, like a cartoon, but it wasn't a cartoon, but you flip through and you watch like A-Rod hitting a home run. Like, think like, animation, like flip, it's like in your watch. We got like A-Rod stuff for Christmas that year because we were so convinced that A-Rod was going to be a Red Sox. He was going to be the shortstop of the Red Sox. So it was fascinating. They're going to, they put Manny on irrevocable waivers. They wanted Manny gone. Nomar had become a problem. He called into WEEI like that off season. Wow. It was wild. Like, and oh my God, they're going to get A-Rod, the best player in baseball, because he was at the time. Yeah, and Maglio Ordonez, well, A-Rod and Maglio Ordonez, that'll be great. And then it doesn't happen. The Red Sox want him to take a pay cut. He's willing to take a pay cut. The union steps in and says no. So you're mad at the union. You're mad at the Red Sox for not being willing to pay the price. And then like everything for the last 85 to 86 years at that point.
Mhm.
The Yankees come in and get the guy all because they're willing to pay. They're willing to pay him, and they're willing to be the Yankee. I mean, it was like the damn Yankees experience. And then George Steinbrenner comes out and criticizes the Red Sox and mocks them for being cheap and not being willing to pay A-Rod. And it was the biggest kick in the dick. And you're like,
yes,
oh no. And you're coming off that ALCS where they were so
epic.
close.
Oh yeah.
It was pain, man. It was pain. And thank God it didn't work out. You know,
Hold your horses, sir. It fucking worked out in 09. Fuck that. But
the Red Sox, there's no way they win in 04 with A-Rod. There's no way.
That's true. And you know what's funny? And we gotta harp on this point because 04, that summer of 04, I remember still was one of the all-time favorite summers personally, but even more so as a baseball fan, because me being the baseball nut jobs that we are, there were several things we remember about the sport in 04. And for the younger audience who's going to be listening to this and watching this later on, Barry Bonds was at the end of his pinnacle in 04.
Yep.
In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he set the single season record for intentional walks in 04.
I believe it was 04.
I believe it was 04 too.
It may have been 03, but I mean, it was like you look at Bonds from 01 to 04.
Oh my God.
When he was roided out to all hell.
Yeah.
He was. Those were, you want to talk about like a 3-4 year span that like you basically don't see in baseball.
You'll never see
it
again.
Right. 04 was like the last true. I mean, he was good until the end. Like, and frankly, he, even after the Giants let him go, like he still could play baseball. Yeah. But nobody wanted to be the team that brought him in. I mean, but yeah, like 04 was the last of that like Barry Bonds years.
Absolutely. And we remember about that 04 season, like Barry Bonds, like was truly a video game in human form. Like that's not hyperbole. And we remember like Randy Johnson that was his last great year with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He had that perfect game, remember, May 18th against Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I remember that game was on TBS back when TBS owned the rights to broadcast Braves games nationally. And it was just like, damn, that was an unforgettable summer. But I mean, you go back to Yankees Red Sox, July 2004, the summer is just starting to cook at this point. Yankees Red Sox, they're neck and neck in the AL East. Let's go to that fateful day. July 24th, 2004. What do you remember most about that day and about that game and at that moment?
I'll never forget Varitek getting an A-Rod's face.
Oh, yeah.
And because at that point, people forget about that 04 team. They really kind of floundered. They kind of struggled. I mean, they were always above water, but they were not a wagon by any stretch of the imagination. And they were a little bit lifeless for the first few months of that year. And that to me was the turning point of that season is, Arroyo plunks A-Rod, A-Rod's talking out to him. Varitek gets in front, sticks the glove in the face, and all hell breaks loose. And that was like the first time that I remember being truly fired up about something that I had watched that year from that Red Sox team, because I remember even saying a few weeks before, I'm like, this is not the year. They don't have it. I mean, they really weren't that good. They underachieved, and particularly given their pitching staff, it was disappointing. They underachieved until that day. That was the turning point that day. Bill Miller hits the walk-off home run.
Yeah.
Actually, didn't Rivera blow a save that Bill Miller?
That was the game. That was the game that Rivera blew the save in. Yes.
Yes. So Bill Miller, I think, was the one who had the hit right back up the middle against Rivera.
Yeah, and
Bill Miller could hit Mariano Rivera. He's one of the few people in the game who consistently, it felt like, could hit Rivera, because he did the exact same thing in game 4 too. He drives in Dave Roberts. He hits it right back up the middle. He had a very similar hit on that July 24th game to tie the game, I think, and then they won it in extras, and I think he homered, but I could be wrong. It was a walk-off home run for Bill Miller.
Yep.
Yeah. And he had the game tying hit too, if I recall. I'm going to go back and check after this, take my word for it. I think that's what happened, because I remember
he had the walk-off home run, because like the Yankees had they had a multi-run lead going into the ninth. Rivera had let it slip away, and then he gave up the walk-off home run. But man, I remember just the headlines in New York the next day, like because it was a Saturday too. It was on Fox. It was a Fox Saturday game back when like Fox actually had
that was like a big deal.
It was an actual big deal. Like so, it was like, oh man, the next day, what am I going to see in the New York Post? And there it was, the freaking image that we didn't know it at the time. We didn't know that it was going to be the image of, oh my God. I mean, A-Rod just showed how much of a freaking pansy he really is. And then for Red Sox fan, it was like, oh my God, hell yeah. Like now we feel like we just might have a chance. And to your point about the Red Sox floundering early that season, because I remember they had the two-headed monster of Schelling and Pedro. And Pedro was still, although he was not like the Pedro of 97 to 03 and that year, but he was still Pedro, and they were underachieving. So to me, it was like, man, we got this division under wrap. Like, what do we have to worry about? Oh, right. Our pitching staff, not that good. Kevin Brown, blue. Mike Mussina, oh my God. Mike Mussina, he was not that good in 04, but don't get me started about Carl Pavano, one of the worst free agent pitching signings that the Yankees have ever made. Like, can we talk about Carl Pavano for a moment, please? Because for a guy who was talented, don't get me wrong, but could never freaking figure it out in New York. Why do you think that was?
Because I don't know, because he got hurt, but he was like, he couldn't handle the market, all that. Like, so Pavano was, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Pavano, didn't he sign after the 04 season?
After the 03, because he was with Florida for the 03 championship team.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I want to say, and I could be totally wrong about this. I want to say Pavano signed with the Yankees after 04 because I remember when Pedro signed with the Mets, I wanted the Red Sox to go out and sign Carl Pavano because the Red Sox traded Carl Pavano for Pedro, and that was another kick in the dick. Another, 13-year-old Matt McCarthy wanted Carl Pavano. Thank God they didn't get him. 11-year-old Matt McCarthy wanted Jose Contreras. Thank God they didn't get him. But it was just, there was a string there where the Yankees beat the Red Sox out to everybody. And of course it ultimately worked out just fine for the Red Sox. But that was another lesson in life that the Yankees are always going to outbid the Red Sox, which, really isn't the case anymore. But under George Steinbrenner, I mean, you knew the boss was going to go spend his money. And I know people hated him. He was good for baseball because that Yankee thing is good for baseball. In sports, I'm a firm believer in this. Villains are the most important things in sports.
Absolutely.
You need to have, why are the Patriots the most compelling team in sports? And it goes back to the draft. Like, they're going to be one of the stories of the draft tonight. Why?
Absolutely.
Because they're the Patriots and they're villains. And when the Yankees are good, and when the Yankees are doing Yankee things, like going out and trading for Stanton, that was like the most Yankee thing they've done in a long time.
I remember.
Oh, man. It's like the Yankees are back. Like, this is more, and they haven't, but when the Yankees were going to outbid you for everybody and you knew it, like, you think Shohei Ohtani would be on the Angels right now if the boss were still alive? No way. Shohei Ohtani would be a Yankee.
He's a Yankee.
He'd be a Yankee. And you know what? As painful as that was for the 29 other franchises, it was good for the game. It is good for the game.
It really is.
The Yankees being good is the best thing for baseball, and the Yankees being hateable is the best thing for baseball.
And I feel like not enough Red Sox fans can honestly, as a collective fan base, can come to that point and admit that the Yankees are being good is actually good for the sport. And that's understandable given the natural birthright of hating the Yankees. But let's be honest, when the Yankees are doing Yankees, as you mentioned, like this is wonderful for the sport, because here's the irony of it all, and it just occurred to me. Let's go back to December of 2017. Yankees just lost to the eventual cheating Houston Astros. That's a fact. That's not an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And what do? They go out and they trade for Giancarlo Stanton. I remember Tony Maz on 95 The Sports Hub saying something along, I want Stanton as a Red Sox. I want him in the middle of that lineup. This is before they would end up getting JD Martinez. And the Yankees go out and get Giancarlo Stanton. The Red Sox, they would end up getting JD Martinez a couple of months later, just before spring training. And it was like,
That's the old days.
The old days are coming back again. And then we all remember the brawl that happened in April of 18. Yep. And it just seemed to like set the tone for that entire season. So why is it, do you think, that whenever it seems like the Yankees make a big move and the Red Sox make the seemingly lesser move, air quotes used here, it just seems to work in the Red Sox favor? Because after all, it happened in 2004,
yep,
and it happened in 2018.
I don't necessarily have an answer for that other than, we see it in sports all the time. Oftentimes the biggest move doesn't end up being the best move. Sometimes it does, but oftentimes it doesn't. The team that spends the most money in free agency, the Patriots, this offseason, oftentimes that doesn't work. Because that's one of the great things about sports. And this, like, they don't play it on paper. And it's fun to play it on paper, and it gives us stuff to talk about. But then they play the actual games too. That's why off seasons are the best. And that's why off seasons, like I've always said about the NBA, like the NBA right now, which has the best off season product, I think you can make the argument of the four major sports, it actually has the worst on court product, on field product, on ice product right now. But the NBA is so compelling because July 1st is the best free agency period all of the sports have to offer right now. Why? It gives us something to talk about. Oh, did you see that move they made? Oh, they're going to be a contender. Oh my God, I can't believe that trade happened. I can't believe this guy wants out. Like the drama that unfolds in that league, it doesn't come from the actual on-court product.
No,
it comes from July 1st. So that's where baseball needs to improve again. It's like, sure, we spent the entire offseason focused on A-Rod in 2003. And it was horrible when, for me, when he went to the Yankees.
Oh yeah.
And then, was A-Rod a factor in that 04 ALCS? Barely, not really at all. Maybe and that's something to talk about even more, so it's just, I don't have an answer as to why it's worked out well for the Red Sox over the last 15 years when they've gotten into an arms race with the Yankees, because the Yankees get the biggest guy, the Red Sox get the second biggest guy or whatever. I don't have an answer as to why that's worked out. My only answer is sometimes the big moves in sports don't work out, but it gives us something to talk about.
You talk about like rivalries, especially having enemies, is the best thing that sports can have right now. Baseball, and I feel like what we've seen in baseball in 2021 has not disappointed in the slightest bit. I mean,
it's been awesome.
We just saw one hell of a series just this past weekend between the Padres and the Dodgers, and what we saw was, I think, the ignition of a new rivalry in the National League West between the Dodgers and the Padres, because you thought that the Dodgers can be able to spin their way and outspin everybody, but the Padres showed no, we can go out and make the big moves. We can just go out and acquire Blake Snell from the Tampa Bay Rays. We can go out and we can acquire a Yu Darvish and so forth. And then you look at that rotation, you're like, they got guys that can throw 95 and harder. I mean, including Davidson Lamet, Chris Paddock, and not to be forgotten. And it's just incredible to watch that this Padres team. And I'm sure, like, as we get into May, they're going to become more consistent. But April is usually that feel out month. Like, what do they do well? What don't they do well? When you look at the Dodgers and you look at the Padres, do you think that this is a great microcosm as to where baseball should be in terms of providing an actual on-field entertainment product?
Oh, it's the best baseball has to offer right now. I mean, those two teams have played have been awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me a little bit of like where the Red Sox and the Yankees were. I don't know if we're there yet, because listen, 03 was an ignition for everything in 04. Absolutely. And all that. The Dodgers and the Padres don't have that yet. They met in the playoffs last year, but they're not at that level. And they don't also have, 8 decades of one team beating the hell out of the other team. Like they don't have that, but it did remind you, it's like, man, this is what a rivalry can do for baseball. When you've got the best two teams in baseball, arguably, in the same division, and they're playing each other 19 times a year, and you can tell that they both know it too, and you can tell that this game is more important to them than the average run-of-the-mill game in April, and they're playing with urgency, and they're playing, like it really matters, and they're giving you that product the way they've given you that product. It's been awesome, man.
It really has.
Awesome. those games, they all delivered. There wasn't a dud amongst them. And you've got legitimate superstars on both teams, and Tatis, is becoming the face of baseball. I just, God, I hope that shoulder holds up. I mean, I really do. And the Dodgers are the best team in baseball. They're a wagon. They are so good. But I mean, the personalities, the stars, they've got everything, you've got, the flashy and in your face, with Tatis. You've got much more understated in Mookie Betts. Although, I mean, when he made that, that game-saving catch, him getting up and pounding his chest, it was great.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Hosmer is just as solid a player as they come in baseball. They've both got great pitching staffs, and Buehler's amazing to watch.
Absolutely.
And Kershaw's, not what he once was, but he's still Kershaw. Like, it's just, man, you got to watch. You got to watch. Like, I'm circling the dates, like, as to when the Padres and the Dodgers are playing.
And I'm ready.
It's next June.
It's June.
Like,
yeah.
It's just, man, it's when do you say that in baseball? It's like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch out of market baseball because I have to watch this game. It's awesome. It's really great.
Absolutely. And which is part of the reason why I subscribed to the MLB TV package for the entire season, because I just knew that there was going to be a lot of compelling storylines in baseball, not just in terms of the Red Sox, who them being 16-9 right now, as we are at the end of April, is actually shocking in its own right. But the storylines across baseball, one of them in which that I want to touch on, especially one of the big surprising storylines in baseball this season has been the Chicago White Sox in this regard.
Yep.
You look at where they are in the AL Central right now. You look what this team has, and going out and bringing out, Tony La Russa out of retirement, and Carlos Rodon throws that no-hitter. And you look at the talent that they have, Michael Kopech, and as well as Lucas Giolito, and obviously the position players. I mean, you can't go wrong with Eloy Jimenez and as well as like Jose Abreu, the reigning league MVP at first base. Does the White Sox scare you as a potential October opponent currently right now, based on what you've seen through the first month?
Yeah, I mean, listen, on paper, they're one of the most talented teams in the American League. And, they were a really sexy pick. People really like them as, that popular pick to be, a real force, a real wagon in the American League this year. Also, because I think that division is really weak. I mean, the Royals have gotten off to a really good start. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming.
No.
The Royals themselves said they were going to compete, and they traded for Andrew Benintendi. You're like, well, that's kind of a strange move for a team like that to make. Like, they must think they can compete. And not, I mean, Benintendi's been awful, but it gave you a little bit of a sense into their thinking, and they were adamant. They said they were going to compete. I don't know if they still will, but it's been a really good start for them. That is overall a weak division. The Twins have had a terrible start. The Indians had a fire sale. The Tigers aren't good at all. So the White Sox should, to me, win that division based on the talent they have on that roster. Let's see if they put it together, though. And I mean, you've seen this a million times in sports too, right? You have that team with the young talent. They've got all this potential, but they need to learn how to win, and they need to learn how to put it together. We'll see if that happens. They've had a good start, not a great start. It's been pretty good. I think, they're 12-10 as we sit here today.
Yeah.
But they're the most talented team in that division, that's for sure. And I think the American League overall is a pretty weak league.
This is shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, there's a real opportunity for them to be one of the best teams in the league right now. But you can say there's an opportunity for everybody. Like, I don't think the Red Sox are all that talented, but I think they've got kind of a winning formula, winning DNA. They grind out every game. They're in every game. And in this American League, that should be good enough for a playoff spot, because I think the rest of the league is really still pretty weak.
It's shocking how weak the American League is as a whole, as of right now, considering that I thought that the A's would be a lot stronger than what they have been. But ever since
of course, they got off to an 0-6 start, and they've been on fire since.
Exactly.
But it's been so up and down. They have the second best record in the AL, or the third best record at this point. But it's been so
very Jekyll and Hyde. Like,
yeah,
it's like pick one, for goodness sakes. Damn. And I want to switch over to the National League, because last night we saw what happened in St. Louis between the Phillies and the Cardinals. And this is something that really irritates the living hell out of my soul. And that is you have back-to-back hitters. First and foremost, thank God Bryce Harper is okay. In case for those who did not see what happened, go check it. It's nasty, but it could have been a lot worse. But then after Harper gets hit, Didi Gregorius gets hit in the ribs with a 95-mile-per-hour fastball in the ribs, and both benches get warned. And it's like, are you shitting me? Like, why are both benches getting warned here? And Joe Girardi comes out, and he gets ejected, as he should.
Yeah.
What's up with umpires feeling the need to police the game when they're in that particular moment where, like, no, the game doesn't need to be policed. The pitcher for the Cardinals should have been yanked after that second one, because it's like, really? Come on.
Yeah, I think in some ways the umpires, I'll actually defend the umpires on this a little bit. Sure. I think they were in a really tough spot. Neither Harper or Gregorius were hit on purpose, but they both got hit back to back. They both got hit, in an ugly fashion. Harper in particular, that was ugly. I mean, getting hit in the face. I mean, that was brutal. Thank God he's okay. Yeah. And Gregorius taking one right in the ribs, that hurt a lot. That kid on the mound had no idea where the fuck that ball was going.
At all. Yeah.
No clue whatsoever. And you know what? Good on Girardi for yelling at that pitcher to throw it over the plate, because here's the thing. This is the big leagues. All right. And this is, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Yeah. Like, we're trending in a direction where it's like, if you've just got great stuff, they'll put you on the mound. Like, well, that kid had no idea where it's going, and that's a danger. That kid was dangerous. So he's got no place in the big leagues if he can't put it over the plate. Like, that's go back to the minor leagues if you can't do that. So I've got no problems with Joe Girardi yelling, at him. I thought that was great. Throw the ball over the fucking plate. That was awesome. Good for Joe Girardi for understanding that it wasn't the Cardinals putting a hit on, two of their best players. It was just some guy on the mound who didn't deserve to be on the mound, and good for him for calling him out. But in regards to the umpires, I actually do understand why they did this, and here's why. People are saying, well, there's no way those guys were thrown at intentionally. I understand that. But if the Phillies decided to take matters into their own hands and throw at somebody deliberately just as payback, I do understand why the umpires warned both benches. Now, the Phillies want the leeway. They, and the problem is it's changed the game. It will change the way the game is pitched for the rest of the game, because guys aren't going to go inside because they're afraid they're going to hit somebody accidentally and get run as a result. But the umpires do have to cover their own asses, because their superiors are going to say to them, you needed to take control of that game right there. You needed to issue warnings. I understand why they did, like, it goes back to a few years ago when, Chase Utley got thrown at, and, you had that great audio, Tom Hallinan, who was a longtime crew chief in baseball, saying our ass is in the jackpot too. That's the umpires last night. They know their asses are in the jackpot too, because if they don't issue warnings to prevent the Phillies from even having the option to retaliate, which maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't, I don't know. You could say that they had every right to retaliate, and by the old school code, they probably would have, just to, get even or whatever. I think they did have to issue warnings there, even though it wasn't intentional. I mean, back to back like that, you gotta find a way to take control of the game, because if the Phillies then do hit somebody intentionally or unintentionally and nothing happens, then all of a sudden, the Cardinals are going to start throwing at guys. Like they had to almost, the Phillies unfortunately get punished, but they had to put a stop to it, because if the Phillies hit a guy intentionally or unintentionally, then the Cardinals are going to think it's intentional. They're going to start throwing at guys' heads. And I had no problem with it, even though it was not intentional. They had to control the game some way, somehow.
Switching from baseball to hockey, the Bruins. Oh man, this Bruins team, they're giving me, maybe, I don't know if it's a wet dream or if it's an actual dream, or even hell, a possible preview as to how good this team could actually be. But they're back home tonight as we record against the Sabres, a 7:00 puck drop. And I look at the team post trade deadline, and there has been a noticeable difference in a way that this team has played on the ice, with the exception of that lull that they went through late last week. And I look at this team and I say, if they could somehow get Charlie Coyle going, because he's become an absolute enigma at this point. This is a team that could actually make a run at Tampa Bay to get to the finals. And I'll ask you this: what's up with the third and fourth line? Which in the last couple of years, the third and fourth line have been, specifically the fourth line has been a strength for this team, but in most recently, it's been anything but.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Coyle on that third line. They need more from him. They need way more. I mean, particularly with the contract that he's now under. I mean, Coyle been one of their best players for the last few years, and you know, they've been moving so many guys in and around on that line. I understand that there, you know, probably hasn't been an opportunity for him to get comfortable, but you know, at this point, they have solidified those top two lines. So as a result, the trickle down effect is that should make that third line more stable, and it should, you know, give them more stability, which they have not had.
Yeah.
They desperately need that third line to find lightning in a bottle. I don't really see it happening. I think that ultimately is a limitation with this team, but they need Coyle to play like he did in the cup run in 2019. I mean, that's if they're going to have a cup run, they need something like that to happen. I don't see it happening at this point, just given, you know, what I've seen all this year from that line. It's hard to envision it at this point, but Coyle is better than he's shown this year. So, you know, that's the hope, right? The good news is they have solidified those top two lines. And I think, you know, bringing in Lazar has made that fourth line better. It feels like they're rolling three lines right now.
Yeah.
But to win a cup, you need to roll
four.
Yeah. So listen, they're a great product to watch. They give you something every night. They really do. I don't think they're a cup winning team. I think they need a lot to go right for them to be a cup winning team, but I'm not going to rule it out. I wouldn't bet on it, but I'm not, you know, ruling it out the way that like I'd rule out the Celtics doing anything. The Bruins,
we're both in agreement on that. By the way, like let's not even touch the Celtics right now.
Thank you. I think I'm going to protest talking the Celtics. They're not worthy of my attention. They're not worthy of my discussion. I think right here and now I'm going to implement a protest. It's like what did LBJ said when he wasn't going to run again? If nominated, I will not accept. If elected, I will not serve. Like if asked to talk about the Celtics, I won't. Period.
We're not touching. We're not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole. But you talk about in hopes of the Bruins making a cup run again this year. We all know about the story of Jeremy Swayman, University of Maine product, and he's having a Jordan Bennington-esque run, with the exception that he's actually been better, like numbers wise. Like during the course of the games, like he's played behind Tuukka Rask, and even before Tuukka Rask returned from injury. So if the playoffs were to start today, I'll ask you this controversial question, and I know this is going to ruffle feathers with a lot of Bruin fans. Who do you want starting in net, Rask or Swayman?
Oh, you know, like I don't want to be a fence sitter. They always say don't be a fence sitter. Have an opinion. Here's my opinion. I'm going to split the baby on this.
Oh, no.
I do go with Rask.
Yeah,
I do. But at the first sign of trouble, I'm not afraid to go to Swayman. I think the kid's proven it. I mean, listen, Rask is a good goalie. The problem is he's never there when you need him to truly be there.
That's my knock against him.
That's the issue with Rask. Like Rask can get you there. He can get you close. I don't know if he's that guy to get you over the hump. But I don't think he's really done anything to lose his job. I think Swayman has done everything to maybe take the job from him. But at the same time, you know, listen, he's played 7 or 8 games at the NHL level. Like, what happens when he does have that first game where he gives up 5 goals? Let's see how he bounces back. Now, I think the kid's going to bounce back fine because you know what? He seems poised. He seems like he belongs. Like, that's the best way I can describe Swayman. The guy belongs. He has proven that he belongs. And next year, I'm handing over the reins to him. He's shown
I agree.
But in regards to right now, I have them alternate each game. I do. I keep, getting as many looks as I have at the kid. Game 1, Stanley Cup playoffs, Tuukka Rask is my starting goalie, but I'm not committing to Tuukka Rask being my starting goalie the final game that they play in the Stanley Cup playoffs, whenever that, becomes. I would be willing to go to Swayman. I would be.
I think Swayman's the guy. And I know like some people will say, well, it's too small of a sample size, but have you watched the games that he's played? Even the game that he lost, it wasn't necessarily like his fault. Like, I mean, it was just, it was really a combination of I mean, the offense did not finally wake up until it was finally too late. We're talking about the game on Friday against Buffalo, in which that they fell behind early, and the offense finally woke up. But by that point, he was already pulled. So, like, I just wonder if you are the Bruins and if you are looking at this team and you're getting ready to prepare for the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is really right around the corner.
Yeah.
And what is the number one concern that you would have about this team going into the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I just don't think they're deep enough. I don't. Again, you need 4 lines to win the cup. I don't think they have 4 lines. I'm concerned about overall health. They are an older team. Bergeron was dealing with a lower body injury. Like, it's just, can they hold up over the course of 4 rounds, 7 games? I don't know. And yes, of course, Rask, absolutely are they, but they're also young on the blue line too, and I don't know if they're good enough on the blue line yet. I mean, my overall sense here with the Bruins is that they're a good team. If everything went perfectly, they could be a cup winning team. That is a lot to ask for, though. It is. So I ultimately think that they represent themselves very well in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they ultimately lose to a team that's just better than them. In the end, that's just better than them. But they'll put up a fight. They'll represent themselves very well. I just don't think they have the horses. Everything would have to go right. The path would have to be right. The way it just laid down for them in 19.
Yeah.
You need to have like lightning in a bottle, like Swayman comes in and gives you something, or, all of a sudden you're rolling 4 really good lines and it turns out that the kids on the blue line can hold up. They've had so many injuries on the blue line this year. Grzelcyk's a smaller guy, and I love Grzelcyk, don't get me wrong, but can you hold up? McAvoy, is going to, have to shoulder a huge load, which I think he's capable of. But you just look up and down the list, like Kevin Miller, is he going to hold up? Probably not.
No.
So they're going to need a lot of things to go right for them to win the cup. I don't see that happening. But what I do see happening is them representing themselves very well in the playoffs.
And the last question I'll ask you is pertaining to the Red Sox, 16-9.
Yep.
We're about to go into the month of May. Do you think that this start that they've gotten off to is sustainable and maintaining their position in the AL East, knowing that Toronto, they can get hot at any time? We've seen how good Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is and can be when he really gets going. And as well as the Yankees are basically the sleeping giant that nobody wants to awaken at this point.
Yeah, I think it is sustainable to a certain extent. I think they will be a competitive team all year long because they have enough pitching. I don't think their pitching's great, but their pitching has been very good so far. I don't know if it's sustainable at this level, but I don't think it's going to be awful either. They're going to hit enough. And again, they grind out games. Like there have been 3 games this year that they really haven't been in. Seattle last week, game 3 against the Orioles, and then they didn't play well against the Orioles that first series, but there have been 2 or 3 games that they haven't been in. Even the games they've lost, have been they've been in it the whole time. So I think the rest of the division will start to play better. The Rays have been playing better baseball. The Blue Jays have a lot of talent. We'll see if they put that together. And the Yankees are not this bad. I'm sorry. But what the Red Sox are doing are sustainable in the sense that they are going to be competitive all year long, and they should be a playoff team. That's how I feel about it. I don't know if that's winning the division or anything, but they should be a playoff team, and they're worthy of an investment. They should go out and add, outfield help. They should add pitching help. They are worthy of an investment. They should be in this until the very end. They should be a playoff team. That part I do believe is sustainable. I don't know if they're the best team in the division, but I know their competitiveness is absolutely sustainable.
I think Tampa Bay might be the best team in the division right now, even though they did lose their ace Blake Snell via trade last offseason. But I think they're still that team, and it would be foolish to count them out completely. But to wrap up this thought, I definitely believe that if you look at the Red Sox rotation, and I do wonder how much of a factor Garrett Richards can be. We saw he finally won a game, thank goodness, and on Tuesday night, and as well as Nick Pivetta behind Nathan Eovaldi and as well as Eduardo Rodriguez, and then also Chris Sale is coming back at some point, but how effective can he be? That's really going to be the big question in terms of his ability to stabilize the rotation. So I just want to get your thoughts on that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, listen, all those guys you named, again, you need everything to go right. You need Rodriguez to stay healthy. You need Eovaldi to stay healthy. Richards obviously has been tremendously up and down. You really buy in on Pivetta. Pivetta and Perez, they're back end of the rotation guys, but they're all big league pitchers. I don't know how good they all are, but they're all big league pitchers. So I don't know if they're going to pitch at this level, the level that they pitched in April, which is really pretty outstanding. I don't expect them to keep that up, but I also don't expect them to completely crash and burn. So, I feel decent enough about this pitching staff to say, this is not a great staff, but it's a major league staff. And you know what? They're going to keep them in games. That's all I ask. It's been a very professional first 4 turns or whatever through the rotation, 4 or 5 turns, first month through the rotation. It has been a very professional job done by the Red Sox starting staff. They're keeping them in games and they're giving them a chance every single night. Again, it's like the Bruins too. The Red Sox are going to need a lot of things to go right because I don't think their talent is, all that fantastic, but they grind out games. They don't give in, and their pitching staff has kept them in games and they've done just well enough. I mean, they're winning a lot of close ball games, and when they lose games, it's close. That's a formula for a level of success. I don't think it's a formula for winning the World Series. I don't think they're there, but this is a success to put out a good, grinded out, win some ball games type of team. And that's exactly what they're going to do. And they should absolutely compete for a playoff spot.
Matt McCarthy of 98.5 The Sports Hub. Matt, it's been an absolute blast talking with you today. Like, seriously. Definitely can't wait to do this again with you because listen, that stretch where we just completely just reminisce on like the good times of baseball, that and it by itself, it just left me salivating for like, man, those were the good times. But above all else, I really enjoyed having you on the podcast today, and we definitely can't wait to do this again with you real soon.